Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the world famous podcast, Beating the Press. Thank you for joining us. If this is not your first time joining us, hello YouTube, good to see you again. For the rest of you, welcome to the BTP party where all we talk about is football. If you've not heard of us before and you've accidentally clicked on us, click that like, subscribe, share, make us rich and famous, all that fancy jazz. Today we are going to continue our look back through previous World Cups, and we have reached World Cup 2010, where the World Cup finally went to South Africa, and that really famous song. If YouTube don't copyright it, I'll try and clip it in here, and you can listen to it. But if not, just Google World Cup 2020 song, 2010 song. It's amazing, it's brilliant. So you'll have some of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over to Kristian, who is also my co-host. I'm Ty. This is Kristian. I'm going to pass over to Kristian. I'm going to ask him to do a rendition of the 2010 World Cup song. So, Chris, away you go.
Yeah, I was actually I don't know whether you noticed when you came on the chat with me, I was actually nodding my head, and that was because I was watching the highlights of the game and they had on in the background Shakira's song, "Welcome to Africa." It was a good song, man. And it was. I think was it the first time that the World Cup was held in Africa altogether as a continent?
Yeah, I think it was, wasn't it? It was a big thing that. So yeah, I know it was definitely the first time in South Africa, but I was going to say Africa, but I thought I'll play the safe option and go South Africa because I know I'm right there. I don't know I'm popping. Well, no, it's not. It was actually held in Algeria in 2000 whatever. So I was like, right, we'll just go with it. We'll go with it. But yeah, so what's go on?
Yeah, so basically, I think it was meant to be held in like a number of different African countries, but then I don't know whether it got decided at the last minute that it was going to get moved to South Africa. And when I say last minute, I think it was a couple of years beforehand, but I think it was going to be like a shared venture. And then there was, rumors of corruption, as there always tends to be around the World Cup bids and that. It ended up in South Africa, but. It was a memorable World Cup. Obviously we've been through all the World Cups. The most recent World Cups, and now we're getting towards the ones where we have a lot better memory of it. And South Africa is definitely one that lives in the memory because of a number of different things. Like you mentioned, the song you had, the Vuvuzela, the most annoying sound ever in a football match, I think. You also had, I can't remember the name of the ball. The ball, there was like a controversy about the ball before it was even kicked. They said it was like a beach ball. Jubilani. The Jubilani.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It'd hit the ball and apparently it'd move all over.
Keepers were complaining. Keepers were complaining for fun. It's like, it's not fair. We can't see the ball. It's moving left, right. All techniques out the window.
Yeah, it was a beautiful looking ball as well, and it was such a memorable World Cup for so many different reasons, and like you think of beforehand as well, the qualification to the World Cup as well. It was like controversy in that because obviously you had Ireland and Thierry Henry, the handball.
Was that the World Cup?
That was the World Cup, yeah.
I remember that one, yeah.
And we'll obviously talk about why that meant nothing to France, really, coming up. Ireland might as well have went.
All the Irish were like cursing the one there. It worked out all right for them.
Yeah, exactly. So as always, we're just going to follow we're going to follow a structure. We're going to talk about our memories, and we're just going to discuss England, discuss Italy, and then move on into the knockout. Yeah, no, we will. We covered a lot of Italy in the last one. We only we do it in this one. So first off, we'll start with England, as we always do. Qualified quite easily. England manager at the time was Capello. Yeah, Capello. And this was, I want to say this was end of golden generation almost, or there, yeah. Like, cause I'm looking at the group that we were in. We were in a relatively easy group. I think it was United States, Slovenia, and Algeria, and we really struggled in that group. And our opening game was against the USA. which ended up finishing 1-1. And I don't know if you remember what happened in that game.
I do remember, and I'm pretty sure was that the one where Paul Robinson threw an absolute clanger for USA's goal.
It is, yeah. So Paul Robinson threw an absolute clanger in just before halftime, but it was the most woeful game ever. But we got it off to an absolute flyer, and it was Steven Gerrard. Steven Gerrard pinged one in. We thought, yes, this is it. The World Cup has officially started. It was only 4 minutes in, but not a single person in the country saw the goal because ITV cut to an ad break as he struck the shot. So when they came back, it was England 1-0 and celebrating, and not a single person saw it. So then we went on. They saw the USA goal. They didn't miss that, and then we moved on to Algeria, I want to say, in the second game, which was a boring 0-0. And then in the last game, group game, we drew against Slovenia, which allowed us.
I think they beat Slovenia, didn't they? I think you beat Slovenia in the last game.
No, we drew. We actually qualified with 5 points. We drew 2-2.
Yeah. No, I think it was a draw against USA, a draw against Algeria, and then beat Slovenia in the last game to get through the 5 points. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember all three of the games were really drab, shit affairs, weren't they? Like really, really depressing.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like if I look through the team right now, it was a time where I think David Seaman had retired on the previous World Cup we mentioned. Was it the previous World Cup that we mentioned? Well, anyway, we were going through a period of really shitty keepers. Like we had Robert Green was the goalkeeper. I think we switched to David James during the tournament as well. And although our defence was relatively sound, we had Ashley Cole, Ledley King, John Terry, and Glenn Johnson. Rio Ferdinand, I don't know if you remember, he got injured on the first day, one of the training days just before the tournament began. So he was out in that. We had Gerard Lampard, which obviously never ever seemed to work out. And then against the USA, I can tell you that Milner was on the left and Aaron Lennon was on the right. And
good old Leeds connection.
Yeah, exactly. And you have Emile Heskey and Wayne Rooney up front. So we're really struggling at that time. And obviously we'll discuss in a bit what actually went on in the quarterfinals. Is there anything you want to explain about Italy?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's not funny. There seemed to be a little bit of a phase, and I think it started in that 98 or 2002, where winners of the previous World Cups had like a shocking following World Cup. They'd either get knocked out in the first round, and Italy were really nice of them to sort of continue that trend. So what they did was they played. I mean, their group was absolutely dog poo as well, and I remember at the end it worked out. I think they played. There's Paraguay in it, New Zealand in it, and I think it's Slovakia the last game it is. I'm just double checking here. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So I remember they played Paraguay first game 1-0, which is Paraguay's decent South American team. It can happen all the time. So that was 1-0. The next game they played New Zealand, they drew against New Zealand. I was like, you sort of think beat New Zealand, they sort of home and hose. And the last game they got playing Slovakia, they've got to win, and they ended up losing 3-2 that game, and it was just like, this is just not good. Do you know what I mean? And that started up and all the way through till now, where Italy really haven't done anything in the World Cup, where they either haven't qualified, they've got knocked out really early after the sort of 2006. It's almost a price you've got to pay for winning like the World Cup, and it was just mad. So, I mean, at the time I was just like, this isn't real. But then you just sort of, you accept it and you move on, and it's sort of like trying to see England to do well, and England were dog shit in the quarters as well. So yes, it was like it wasn't a great World Cup for Italy. But just going back to the memories of the World Cup, you sort of like, you might see me nodding my head when you said Vuvuzelas, the most annoying sound in the history of the game. And then the other thing I really remember from that is that Shabalala. He scored the first goal for South Africa. And it's like, it's a goal for Africa. It's, that's something probably we should have looked back at, and moments of commentary that just sort of stick with you. There's always little moments in World Cup's history, and it doesn't have to be World Cup, it's generally in football. But that's always like, Shabalala, it's a goal for Africa. But yeah, that was just like, it was just great. It was an uplift. It was a start that the tournament needed, and it was perfect. Mexico came back with a better side. They ended up drawing 1-0, but still, just that that momentum started. Right, this is that one momentum started. Keep that momentum going. And I just thought, what a fantastic start if they could have gone on. But ultimately, football's not. We loved those Cinderella stories, but it doesn't always work out like that. It just is better teams will generally win. And the team that ended up winning it will have started an era of domination, and I still stand by it. They're the best national team I've ever seen in my lifetime. But yeah, we'll leave that. We'll just move back onto the England qualified from the World quarterfinals, and they got through to play Germany in the quarterfinals. I'll tell you what I watched that, and I've got a really vivid, clear memory of exactly what happened there. I'll start with you first, and then I'll say where I was and what my thought process behind all that was.
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep it short. We were getting battered. We were getting absolutely battered. I don't remember us being in the game really at any point. And then I think was it 2-1? I think it was 2-1 at the time. And then Lampard struck a long distance shot, hit the crossbar, went behind the line, and then obviously if it was in today's era, I think it would have been. I think it was about it was over. Yeah, it was over, wasn't it? Yeah. So we would have got the goal. It'd have been 2-2, and this momentum might have took us on to potentially win the game. But the reality is, we were so far off it. Like you've seen it in the first 3 group games. The Germans were good, as they've shown. Obviously, they went on to
semis. I think.
They went on to the semis, but they didn't have it easy along an easy route. Obviously, they had to knock out. Was it Argentina as well along the way? So yeah, they were a decent German team. They were definitely better than what we were. What about your memories?
Yeah, so I was in Dublin at the time to watch that game, and I never understood. So I went to watch the game, only place I could find to watch it, and I never understood the hatred the Irish had for the English until I watched that game. So they were literally, it was like being in a German club, German bar, German place, being in Germany. The amount of supporters Germany had for that game, it was unbelievable. Every time Germany scored, the whole house just lifted. I was like, wow, I am on my own and I'm going to keep it quiet here. So not just cheer the England goals. And I remember that game, and it went like, and I remember the game, like I said, when he got 2-1, the Lampard goal would have been, even if they got 2, Germany was so far better than England, do you know what I mean? And he went 3-1, 4-1, and they quite rightly went through and won it. But that was just like something, you sort of remember certain moments in life, wherever you are watching stuff. And that was the one that I remembered when I watched it. I was like, yeah, absolutely. So that went through, and it was just a bit of a. It was the time when England were poor, and it just sort of continued for a few years. I'd say up until Gareth Southgate took over, really. So some of these fans that want better, they should just go back to 2010. You know what I mean? Or 2000, and say this is what England were like. This is what it used to be like.
Well, that was, like I said, that was a World Cup that. We didn't really have a great like a pool to choose from. If you think about it, I think Theo Walcott was chosen for that World Cup. I don't think he played any part in it, but he was chosen for that World Cup just to fill the spot, because he didn't really have any decent players to put in there. So yeah, it wasn't a surprise. It was just another year of disappointment for us. But just quickly going back to the group stages, obviously we already mentioned Italy in the previous World Cup. I think France, the one that we covered in the last podcast, France were in the final, and they went obviously So we mentioned also South Africa. Like normally you get the home nation. Like we cover it, and we always say that it's important that the home nation gets through to the knockout stages. Obviously they didn't in this scenario. But it's usually that the hosts have kind of like an easy group. They're kind of seeded as maybe number 1, and then they go through another decent team, but then two games that they should win. But they were actually in a really difficult group. So I've got it here. You've got Uruguay, Mexico ultimately went through, and then you had South Africa finishing 3rd, and obviously France finishing bottom of that group. So South Africa really had no chance of getting out of there. And but yeah, France, they only scored 1 goal in the whole tournament. And obviously we mentioned the last one, that the last tournament would be Zidane's last tournament. And it's probably a good job that they did, because like I'm looking at their midfield, their front line here. It's Cisse, Ribéry, Gorkov, Gignac, Diaby, Diarra, left back Clichy, Schillaci centre back, Gallas centre back, and Sagna as a right back. Now, can you ever remember in your lifetime a France team?
That is a poor French team.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? And I don't know if you remember as well, Nelka was sent home
Yeah, I was going to say
yeah.
there was always that discontent, and there was a load of up fight. It was fighting within the camp, and that's the sort of you normally associate with Holland, but it was with French this time, and it was really bad. And I remember that. Just a point you made about South Africa, you always need a country to sort of go through for the home nation. If you remember, Ghana did really well in this tournament. We'll talk about Ghana now.
They did, yeah.
And they almost carried Africa, didn't they? Because it was the first tournament in Africa. You sort of needed an African team to go far. So Africa Ghana got through to the quarterfinal. They played Uruguay. That's the game that you'll remember it. If anyone watching this new one, you'll remember it because it was a really standout fixture. If you remember, it was a time Luis Suarez did something which I think every one of us would do for our own country. But because he did it against Ghana, he got absolutely lambasted and he fist pumped it as well. So just to give people a bit, so Ghana qualified, they did the quarterfinals, played Uruguay, real chance to go through. There wasn't much between either team. Anyway, the game's 1-1 in extra time, late on in extra time, and Ghana have squared, they've had a shot, and Luis Suarez has tipped it over the crossbar. Luis Suarez is not a goalkeeper for those of you watching, he's a centre forward, so you can't, the handball, it's a penalty. Anyway, so he's sent off and he's crying and he's like that. So Asamoah Gyan steps up for the penalty. It's like about 3 or 4 minutes left from right. So basically, if they score, they're through. He misses it, and you can see Suarez giving it forward. It's like,
no subtlety.
And then what you do the same, and then it goes to the penalty shootout, and Uruguay win that, and Luis Suarez got absolute batshit crazy. But I genuinely think, if you look back, that is the definition of sacrificing yourself for your team, because he wasn't going to play the next game. He didn't play the semi-final because obviously he got sent off. So that is for your betterment of your country, for your team. And I think, you ask everyone, if you did it, would you do it for England? I'd do it for Italy without.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I don't care. I'm punished for getting sent off. That's fine. I'm keeping my team in it. And that pressure on Asamoah Gyan, it was like the whole of Africa was praying for him to score. And it just got too much and he just missed it. And then obviously Uruguay got through.
Yeah, you made such a great point there. Like, with Africa, I think ever since Pele made that prediction of an African team's gonna, win the World Cup by X date. I can't remember what date he said, but I think it's passed by now. And so there was always a pressure on the African teams, and this team seemed like a team that was like taking the bull by the horns. They beat United States in a tough game in the round of 16, and obviously to get through that game, and then they played against either Netherlands or Brazil, and it just so turned out again that they played against Netherlands because Brazil had an awful second half where they scored an own goal and that. So potentially you could see a world where they would have beaten Netherlands. So they were effectively, an Asamoah Gyan.
Holland only beat Uruguay 3-2. So there was nothing in between Uruguay and Ghana. So that was a close, and it could happen in the whole. Support from basically a continent wanting them to do well, and so it would have just been mad. But
I did feel so bad for them. But like Luis Suarez is the ultimate wind-up merchant. He's the epitome of that player that everyone hates him, but if he plays for your club, you love him. And obviously we had the good fortune of that. But no subtlety whatsoever. But moving on to the rest of the knockouts. Obviously, we mentioned England, but there was obviously another thing that I forgot to mention, that Wayne Rooney, when he was going ballistic down the camera. These are the England fans. These are meant to be our fans. He was.
I remember that. Was that World Cup?
That was that World Cup. Yeah,
I do remember that. So little moments that I do stick out. But if we just sort of move forward and sort of speak about the team of my lifetime, anyway, national team. And that is Spain. So they would always sort of like the nearly. I don't remember. They didn't win 2008, did they? Or did they win 2008?
Yeah, they won 2008. Yeah, they won 3 in a row.
This was the year of domination, so they're banging it up. And they were brilliant. I mean, they might. I mean, if you look back at the scores, they might have been 1-0, but they dominated. They destroyed teams with keeping the ball. They just reinvented the game and played it at such a brilliant. They were lucky enough that they had. You got Iniesta, Busquets, and Xavi, and it's just like, phenomenal players. I mean, to be fair, that their route through to the final wasn't exactly easy. I think they had their Portugal in the knockout last 16. They had Paraguay, who were a decent team. They played Germany in the semis. They beat all of them 1-0. But I'm going to sort of fast forward to the final. And it was the first time, in my memory anyway, I might be wrong, please let me know if I am, that an Englishman refereed a World Cup final. And it was Howard Webb.
Howard Webb, yeah.
And he was horrendous. That first game, do you remember, within the first sort of about 15 minutes, Nigel de Jong should have had a red card for 2-footing, or did he just like stamp in on Xabi Alonso's chest? I'm like,
it was like up here somewhere.
It was there, and I'm like, sorry, how's that not a red card? And he booked him, so the fact that he's seen it, he thinks that's just reckless and it's not excessive force.
I know. I think though you can have a little bit of sympathy with him because the last thing you want to do as I
know what you're going to say. But that's not his role.
I know it's not his.
It's not his role. You want to keep the game. You want to keep the game 11v11. So I get that. That's not your role. You got a referee at the. I mean, that's like a double red. It's not even like one of those that maybe might be an orange. It's like if you could give 2 red cards, you give 2 red cards for that. And then throughout Holland, just all they were doing, they were there just to like basically kick the shit out of Spain. That was their job. They weren't going to do anything else. It was either like we can't match them for football, but this is what we're going to do. And then that little genius of a player, and I know is your favourite player, Andres Iniesta scoring. It was just like it was poetry, wasn't it? And I just still remember watching those players. Iniesta, there's players in the world that I've watched and sort of the last 30 years that have made me like make you fall in love with the game even more just because the way they play. They do stuff that just make the game look so easy, silky, and it's Iniesta's one of them. So it's for me it's Zidane, Iniesta, and Messi. They're the 3 players that just do stuff with the ball and they just glide with it and they make it so easy. But yeah, Iniesta was phenomenal, and I'm so glad Spain won. But for those of you that sort of do follow me on Twitter, maybe 2 of you who are listening. My pinned tweet, and I must have done it in 2010, and I'm going to keep it forever. I think it was this Spain national team is the greatest national team of all time, and it's still there. And I've not had to change it because I don't, and I'll firmly stand by it. So watching that Spanish team, they did it. I know we always say football's like an easy sport. It's not rocket science. People overcomplicate it. But I do think Spain reinvented the game when they started playing, and it was Spain and the Barcelona influence as well. It was a game that the way the game was playing out from the back became the norm. That was the way to do it. The way to do it. You played through the thirds. That was the way to do it. Keeping possession and about penetration. The false 9 came from that because Fabregas had a goal front playing there because they tried to just basically implement what Barcelona were doing as well. And you had a mix of some unbelievable players. You obviously had Casillas. You had. Piqué, Puyol, Ramos. You had all these players. You had, Xabi Alonso, Busquets, Iniesta, David Villa, Pedro. Well, these were players when they were in the pomp. So these were all like top. Fabregas as well when he played the false 9. There was they had unbelievable amount of top quality world class players, which just sort of took them to that level where no one could really play against them. No one could outplay them. Everyone was always like, if you get at them, you could, they're vulnerable at the back, but you never had the ball.
Exactly.
So what are you going to do? Do you know what I mean? So,
well, that's what I mean. If you think about, the likes of, if those of you that have never seen Spain play back then, just think Man City, just think, the way Barcelona play these days, just the way that, they keep the ball. And they had the likes, like you said, the likes of Cesc Fabregas, Torres coming off the bench, and again, like you said, all in the pomp, and they weren't playing against any mugs in the fan. You've got Van Persie, Schneider, the Iron Robin, but they're made to look like mugs. And I don't know whether you remember though, the very first game of the tournament, they actually lost against Switzerland. They lost 1-0, and then and then they went on to do what they did. But I think that it shows you, I think the managers that they had over that period shows you that it didn't really matter who was managing them because the selection, the pool of, like we were saying how bad England's pool of players were, the selection that they had over that period, 2008, 10 and 12, I think you could have had me or you managing them and they would have won that tournament. Back in, I'm reading here that in 2008, they had Luis Aragonés as the manager, and he hadn't managed the team since 2002, and he wasn't even a very successful manager. He was actually a racist, but that's another story. Yeah. And he had managed for about 6 years. He won the Spanish second division, and then went on to manage Spain, and then just randomly won a World Cup, which is easily, obviously, his biggest achievement. But this particular tournament, they had Del Bosque, who was a lot more successful, but he himself had it like around about 4 or 5 years out of managing, and then took over the mantle and then went on to win a World Cup. So, like I say, you didn't have to be an absolute genius manager to win something with this Spanish team. They were just so far superior to everybody else. One team that we did skip over, and one thing which we shouldn't forget, is Argentina. They were managed by Diego Maradona. got any memories on that?
Yeah, it was an absolute car crash, wasn't it? It just shows like, don't let a cokehead manage your team. Do you know what I mean? He was just like,
Yeah.
it was just mental. When I know Messi was there, but it was just like there was no structure to a team. So you saying me and you could manage Spain? People say that you still need a structure. Just like, I mean, could you imagine Maradona managing that Spanish team? They'll probably still win it, but it's just like, yeah, nah, it was just a mess, wasn't it? That I remember.
No, I disagree. I'd be like, anyone who plays for Barcelona and Real Madrid, stand over there.
Yeah.
Anyone else, move over there, and that's the team. Play like you do for them.
Yeah, no, exactly. The other one I thought you might have mentioned was Uruguay. I know we just sort of touched on about what they did, but they did really well because you got Uruguay, a really small country in terms of players and what they had, and they had that strike force of Suarez and Diego Forlan, which was just, and they had the manager Oscar Tavares as well. He was like really, what he got out of that team was just like brilliant. I'm just quickly going to go over just like mention some of the players that played and just sort of like trigger your memory hopefully, and just how good some of the players were. I always think every World Cup you watch, there's always players that stand out. So Philip Lahm, who ended up being, you ask Guardiola's, like we said, one of the smartest. We said he's the smartest player they've ever played with. Play right back, left back, midfield, just phenomenal. Sergio Ramos, obviously, that was when he was Ramos on Puyol, obviously quite heavily influenced by the Spanish team as well. He obviously got Iniesta. Schweinsteiger was decent there as well, and he played. There was obviously Forlan, Suarez. You got Miroslav Klose as well for Germany. That was him.
He fell one short of Ronaldo's record.
He did, yeah. So there was some absolutely top players, and obviously not a single England player or elite player in there.
No, not at all. As always, just before we go, I'm just going to read through the top goal scorers. So on this one, we had I think we had 4 on 5 goals. So Thomas Muller, Wesley Sneijder, David Villa and Diego Forlan. Also on 4 goals, Higuain, Klosler and Robert Vitek. There's one that we normally don't do here towards the bottom of this page, which was Young Player of the Tournament. And can you guess who it was?
Quite old. What we know, 22, 12. So we've got to think someone was around 30 now.
Yep.
No idea.
Thomas Muller.
Oh wow! Is he 30? I thought he was 30 back then.
Yeah, so Thomas Muller, he was joint top goal scorer in the tournament. He was also a young player of the tournament.
That is quickly, I genuinely thought he was 30. He's one of those. We should have a podcast of that. The oldest young player, youngest old player, look at however I'll get it. You know what I mean? There's some absolute passport jobs being done here, like.
And you also have the team of the tournament. Surprisingly, it wasn't just the Spain national team. You've got Enyema for Nigeria in goal. Maicon at right back, Philip Lahm at left back, Sergio Ramos centre back, Puyol centre back, Iniesta left mid, Sanchez from Chile right mid, Schweinsteiger midfield, David Villa striker, Sneijder.
No Xavi or Busquets.
No Xavi or Busquets. Sneijder and Diego Forlan. They did actually have some subs, but we're not going to mention them because they'll go on for quite a while. But yeah, that does surprise me that the Spanish midfield at least weren't in there. But yeah, I agree with you. It almost
feels to me, I don't think the Spanish were appreciated as much at that World Cup. It felt to me, like you look at that, the team. I don't think they were appreciated as much as how good that team was. And obviously, looking back now, we just sort of realise how good they are. Because if you look at some of the young, we'll obviously touch them. We've only got 2 more World Cups to go through, actually, before we get into 2022. But you look at the others, I just felt some poor teams after that. You know what I mean? I just felt.
Do you think they'll, because as we mentioned, Spain were, in the past, they were either. They were very good in certain avenues.
They were defensive. They'd never win. They'd do well and they just sort of fall apart.
Yeah, they were good defensively, not very good attacking, and vice versa on occasion. Do you think we'll ever see a team as good as that ever again internationally?
I mean, you always say there's always going to be it's one of those situations, isn't it, when you get a number of players all born at the same time, all great ability, and they've got everything sort of marries up to it, and everything fits in line perfectly. The other thing was they were all part of the Barcelona team, and they had like 6 steps. So from that Spain's team 11, probably all those 11 were in the top 20, 25 players and the best in the world. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to have a lot of things fall in place for it to happen. And they've all obviously been playing the same way from under sevens all the way through to sort of, elite World Cup level. So you've got to have a lot of things that sort of fall into place. But I'd imagine so, but it's such a hard question. It's like, till the end of time, obviously we're going to get another title that'll be that good. But in our lifetime, I don't know. You sort of get teams. I mean, who's the best team at the moment in the world? There's not really. You've got about 4 or 5, haven't you, that could do well. But there's no like back then. It used to be Spain and Spain only. Like Spain and pissing would be great. Like you'd have to have a lot of things go well, and it's sort of like the other thing was that is a vast majority of those players were playing together every week, and you just put them together in the same position, and it all just sort of worked together. Real Madrid and Barcelona. It was the only time we didn't really have their massive. I remember watching a documentary. I think it was Casillas and Puyol sort of got together as the leaders of Real and Barcelona, saying we've got to work together for betterment of Spain, and that's what it was. So actually, that leads me on quite nicely to my question of the day. Unless you've got one.
No, you fire ahead.
Yes, the question of the day is: was that Spain national team of 2010 the greatest national team that you've ever seen play? Obviously, I've explained why it was for me. Whatever it is, if it wasn't Spain, who was and why, in your reasons for it?
Yeah. So, as we always say at this time of the podcast, if you've been watching, please give us a like, please subscribe, and please share. Also, turn on the notifications so you can see when we drop a video. That would be great. Next up, we are World Cup 2014. Do you remember where that was, Ty?
Brazil, wasn't it?
It was Brazil, yeah. So we've got a bit of a tasty final coming up.
And we've got a really, really fun semi-final as well, which involved Brazil, which I still can't believe happened, but that's the next time.
Yeah, so there's a lot to look forward to on that. Obviously, like we say, keep looking through our channel. You'll obviously see the playlist with all the World Cups that we've done up to now. This is the most recent one that we've done. It has been my favourite up to now. But yeah, so anything you want to say before we shoot off, Ty?
No, thanks for watching, guys, and as always, keep in touch. Please just do engage with us, and we will respond to you. And if you've not watched the previous World Cups, like Chris said, click below and catch up with the other ones. All our thoughts, and hopefully it'll jog some memory for you guys too.
See you later, guys.
See you guys. Bye.